Okay, so what I think I want to do for today is just ramble for a few minutes. And I've been thinking a little bit about how, in light of this current pandemic, diseases haven't crossed. This is not the first time that diseases have crossed over from some animal host into mankind, where also that, or how to phrase that, where mankind ended up being uh, greatly affected and also vulnerable due to human transmission. So, for example, MERS, that crossed over into humans from camels, but there wasn't significant person to person transmission. With the original SARS, that crossed over into humans, but it wasn't as infectious, and we were able to get a hold of it, and people were only um, symptomatic or only transmissible during their symptomatic phases. And part of me is a little curious. Have the other four human coronaviruses, um, I believe, have also gone through a similar shift. They are a similar crossing over into mankind. And currently, in their current forms, with the current people that are alive, those coronaviruses are very benign. They hardly do anything. And even though we do not have long-lasting immunity against these coronaviruses, they will circle around the globe year after year. You will get infected by coronaviruses multiple times in your life, and or at least the four human ones, and you'll even get infected by the same human coronavirus multiple times. And so part of me is curious, when those other four coronaviruses, and not just those coronaviruses, but all diseases in general that pass on to humans, and there is significant human to human transmission, and those diseases are able to evade the immune system, at least long term, during their initial introduction into humanity, would they cause a culling of humans for the few generations that they are first introduced into? And I've just been mulling over this a little bit, where it is possible that after successive rounds of contracting SARS-CoV-2, mankind might be culled to the point where only the people left behind are those who only have very mild disease from SARS-CoV-2. And so what I'm concerned about is, since this disease does not seem to be, or any coronavirus, if it's not eradicated and it's allowed to reinfect the population over and over again, then they're probably going to just infect people over and over again until you have culled off or killed enough of the human population where only those with a few amino acid mutations are resilient enough to never have severe disease. And what is that number? Well, is that number killing off 10% of the human population? Is it 90% of the population? Is it 99% of the population? This is the thing that I'm, concerned and worried about, is that with ever, so for instance, with influenza diseases that cross over into mankind, influenza in general is a disease that that crosses over so frequently that we probably evolved very significant methods of dealing with most influenza strains. Even though it's still a very deadly disease, we have mechanisms in place to handle a large variety of influenzas. So influenzas, as you know, they're segmented, and so the different segments of you can view them as like chromosomes of the influenza virus, and they are able to interchange among each other, especially if you are, if you are infected with multiple strains of influenza, they can interchange among each other, which is one of the ways that you can get birds or pigs or humans or any other type of animal. If one animal gets infected with multiple types of influenza, it's very easy for that mixing and matching to occur, and then you can develop very new influenza pathogens. And this is a very, I would say, an easy way for influenza strains to reinfect the human population over and over again. But I would guess argue that because they are so frequent, since influenza so frequently mutates and allows them to basically have sexual reproduction among each other, all the entire animal kingdom and the entire mammalian kingdom, we sort of have evolved ways to deal with the influenza strains. And probably one of the benefit of that is that you don't have antibody-dependent enhancement, or at least to a marked degree, with influenza strains. Now, granted, I should go back on that a little bit, because I think with the Spanish flu, there might have been something associated with a different influenza that was contracted by a lot of children decades before, and that might have caused some sort of antibody-dependent enhancement thing. Regardless, I guess my mentality is with influenza, all that stuff happens frequently, and so we have the mechanisms in place to, I would say we've already been culled. We've already lost so much of our population to evolve ways to handle influenza. But my concern right now is, have we done this for coronavirus? Have we, with the four that have already existed in humankind, was it when they jumped into humans first, were they significantly killing people year after year until eventually we evolved to live harmoniously with them? I don't think that that's far from reality. And I guess one could make the argument, whenever any population or whenever any species becomes so densely populated, it makes it rife, it makes it so easy for a pathogen to just move in and undergo a culling, just because the density of their hosts is so great, which would allow them more opportunities to spread, mutate, and then repeat that process over and over again until the entire population has until the entire population has contracted it once, and then it could probably start all over because of the density. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is the viruses, as they jump into humankind, and if this is a rare enough event, we don't see this with a lot of coronaviruses. There are only 4, when there are probably hundreds of influenzas, strains and combinations that we've dealt with in the past. There's only 4 coronaviruses, I shouldn't say natural, but that were common to humans. And we don't have long-lasting immunity to those. So is it possible that when those 4 coronaviruses, each time they've made the jump into mankind, did they just kill everyone that could not handle it? And then over successive rounds of evolution and generations, eventually you are only left with the coronaviruses that don't kill a lot of people and the people that can survive to reproductive age with those coronaviruses. I'm thinking about this a lot right now. And I guess my concern, my worry right now is if that is a pattern that has happened throughout human history multiple times, is this new SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus also going to be that? And I would also argue is that SARS-CoV-1 was probably going to do that as well had it not been for the amazing technology and all the work that our governing agencies were able to do. And we controlled SARS, but if we hadn't controlled SARS, it would probably be the same thing, where everyone just gets it, or a large number of people just get it, and then it would probably circle over and over again, killing who knows how many people, because if the immunity doesn't last for that long, then all of a sudden you can get infected again. I would assume that with the original SARS that could have happened. And now I'm exceedingly concerned that with SARS-CoV-2, this is going to happen as well. So I just wanted to ramble about that, just a musing that I have, because I'm wondering how this shortens the human life expectancy, or how it lowers the human life expectancy. Because yes, it tends to kill older people faster. But yeah, this would just be another disease on top of all the other diseases that mankind already has to deal with. And yeah, it's going to weigh heavy on me. I mean, I guess we've been pretty spoiled. Now, granted, there are other diseases, like think of malaria, think of yellow fever, dengue. There's all these, we call them tropical diseases, but there's all these diseases that can kill such a large percentage of the human population all the time. I guess the benefit of those is that those diseases do not propagate they're not human-to-human transmission. They usually have to deal with a vector of some form, right? And so one could argue that the benefit or that those diseases would not be creating such a genetic shift among the entire population is because they're concentrated to whatever regions that those vectors live in. So, like a lot of malaria will just stay close to the tropical regions just because that is where the species of the mosquitoes that harbor this disease, that's where they live, that's where they propagate. And because of that, that's where you see the more transmission. But with a disease where it's human to human, no one's safe. You can't just indefinitely separate yourself from the network of humanity. I mean, you could, but that's just so antithetical to what humans are programmed to do that, yeah, it's just so antithetical to us, to how we want to congregate and concentrate, that it's unsustainable almost. It's almost unsustainable. Or, I mean, I guess technically it is. Some people, for some groups, it could be sustainable, but humanity as a whole, that isn't sustainable at all. So, yeah, I just want to have this musing and get it out there, because I think that is something that we're really going to have to consider being a possibility. Now, what I would like to see, or what I think would be very beneficial, is, let's say we find out there's no such thing as herd immunity, and we absolutely cannot get rid of this thing, and it's going to infect us over and over again until we die. There might be a concerted worldwide effort, like what happened with HIV, to just press on the brakes and to completely eradicate it from the human population, or with not HIV but polio, right? So what could happen is governments around the world, or at least governments that are willing to isolate themselves from the rest of the world, might decide we are going to stop all diseases, or all human to human diseases, where they will just stop everything they're doing, monitor all the human to human diseases that people have, and try to eradicate them if they are eradicatable. And yeah, just prevent the spread. And this would be a way that you could combine. It wouldn't just have to be um, SARS-CoV-2. You could decide to eradicate the other coronaviruses if you really wanted to go that route. So I guess this is just what I've been thinking about. So we'll see what ends up happening. It looks like Europe can get this under control. Um, it looks like the United States may or may not get this under control. So we'll see. And all this. Anyways, you have a good one, and I will hope to see you tomorrow.